What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now that we've got the S10 out of the garage, we can get the Mustang back in here. But before we do that, I've been fighting with some demons in my head a little bit about my interior choices. So I've got a couple of cars worth of parts, and I think I want to break up the black a little bit because the 96 came with all black interior aside from the seats. The seats were like a charcoal color. So that kind of clashed on its own already. So my thought process is that I'm going to use parts of the 98, the previous 96, and this 96 and put the interior together and give it a little contrast to match up a little bit better with that blue that I chose to paint the car. So the black dash that came out of the 96 was my initial choice, but with the airbag deploying, it actually damaged the front of the dashboard a little bit. It's got some cracked vinyl and the bracket inside is kind of bent a little bit. But putting the gray airbag into the black dash actually sparked this idea in my brain. And these little guys in my head are back and forth, you know, this isn't going to look good, this isn't going to look good. But I think I figured out exactly what I want to do, and I'm going to give you guys a glimpse of that right now. We'll see how it turns out. So here's the black dash out of the 96. And as you can see, it has the clock in the center of the dash and no cup holders in the center console other than the little flip out one underneath the armrest. And we have this one, which has the cup holders, the fog light button, the extra cigarette lighter plug, and the center console is a little dingy, but I think it'll clean up nice. The harnesses are pretty much the same in the 98 versus the 96, other than the cigarette lighter plug. So I think everything will work well with that one, but I think there's enough differences in the 96 and 98 Mustangs that I'm just going to be on the safe side and go ahead and replace the 98 harness out of that dash with the 96 harness, just so I don't have to run into any gremlins when I go to hook everything up. But I ultimately think this dash will look a lot better in the car with the color choice that I made to paint the car. So let's mess with this a little bit. I got missing a vent on this side. It fell out and I don't know where it went. So I think what I'm going to do is replace that one and the driver's side with a black one. And then looking at this center console has the black cup holder, and that has a broken armrest cover. So I'm going to take the black one off the 96 center console and put it on that one. We'll see how it looks. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is swap out these center console lids. So when it's in the car, there's two screws underneath these little rubber plugs. They got to come out. And then this tray just pops out. It's got a couple little clips in there. And then it pops right out. So once you pop those three screws out, this will come off, and this one can go in the garbage. On the 96, you'll have to take out 3 additional screws underneath because it has this bracket here. And there's your cup holder. Now also on the 96, this is a magnet, and on the 98 it's a clip. So I'm going to try to swap those out. I don't know if that'll work or not, but we're going to see. My God, guys, I don't know why that was such a pain in the butt, but it was. All it is two little clips on each side that holds it in, but they're on opposite corners from each other. So it was kind of difficult getting in there, but I mean, that was a pain in the ass. And it doesn't fit, guys. Unfortunately, the hole's too big. But what I'm going to do is utilize the bottom of a coffee can and make a little bracket out of tin with the proper size rectangular hole in it for this to slide down and clip into, and then wedge it in between this bracket and the plastic and utilize these screws to hold it in place. And there you have it, guys. I kind of like the way it looks, actually. Good to go. Now as for this airbag, it came out of this dash and it was already gray. But since the gauge bezel and the gauges are black, I'm going to get a hold of some of that duplicate color vinyl paint and paint this black to keep that line across the dash. But now we're going to address these vents. There's two 7mm screws underneath here, and then use a panhole separator to pop this down. There's two clips up here at the top, and these slide right out. All right, now we have black vents. I actually kind of like it. It's different. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'll definitely have to do a little cleaning on that center console. It's a little different color because it's so dingy. But if I can't get that out, I might just have to paint that too. The harnesses are out of the dashes, and there are some differences, though the harnesses have the same part number. So if you're replacing your 96 to 97 dash wiring harness, you're going to need one with the glove box light on the 96 248A option. They have the trunk pop capped off, but the harness is there. And then on the 96 also, it has this box and this harness pigtail, which is not there on the 98 harness. And also, this one is bigger on the 96 than it is on the 98, which I believe this is part of the steering column wiring. And the PATS module box is like a light China empty piece of crap compared to the 96, which has some mass to it and doesn't feel so cheap. But other than that, and the clock wiring harness, which isn't on the 98 harness, everything's pretty much the same. So it's a good thing I'm switching it out. Alright guys, so we got the car back in the garage, and I want to get the engine and transmission put in, but we've been having some very crappy weather lately, and I don't want it sitting half in and half out of the garage getting full of water. And unfortunately, once I get the engine in there, I'm not going to be able to move it in and out of the garage without the front wheels on. So if I slide it out, get the engine and transmission in there, it's pretty much stuck halfway out in the driveway. So I'm going to attempt to do it here, and I'm not working with much room, plus I've got parts here, parts there, parts everywhere. So my engine stand is over here, got the engine over here, and I need to get the car up a little higher to be able to roll the engine into the engine bay. So unfortunately, the engine hoist and the engine need to semi-occupy the same space, if you will. So let's give this a go and see if I can do this without damaging anything, and hope it's a good turnout. Alright guys, I don't think that could have gone any better. It worked out pretty well. Just took a little thinking, and I had to take my time, figure out the best game plan. But now we've got plenty of room for activities, and the engine's out the way. So my goal for this video is to get this thing to where I can move it in and out of the garage. Ultimately, I'd like to be able to start it, drive it in and out of the garage. But beggars can't be choosers, and if I got to push it in and out of the garage, it's better than nothing. So unfortunately, I don't have much more time to do anything today. I've got to go get ready for work, but I'll jump right back on it tomorrow. Alright guys, I'm off today, so I'm going to try to get as much done as I can on the car. So I've got a pretty extensive list that I've got to get done, or that I'd like to get done rather. So I've got some transmission fluid I need to get put in the transmission before I get it up under the car. The transmission cross member needs to go back on. I also have a new dipstick for the engine because the bracket's broken off on this one, so I need to remove the exhaust manifold and the engine mount on the driver's side to install my new dipstick to put the exhaust manifold back on. I got a new oil filter. I'll go ahead and do that while the engine's not in the car, make it a little easier. Then I also have a new motor mount for the passenger side where that one's broke. And then I'd like to get the engine up in the air, get the transmission where it needs to be, bolt the cross member in to the car, and then I can put my H-pipe back in before I put the K-member back up under the car. And there's a few other things on my list as well that I'll be doing in the process. We'll jump right into it, guys, and see how much of this I can get done today. Right under the car, onto the transmission. This is your fill plug at the top. This is your drain plug at the bottom. I've drained all my transmission fluid out prior to pulling the engine and trans. Now I'm going to fill it back up. I've got this little hand pump, and this is a manual transmission, but it takes automatic transmission fluid. With the transmission sitting level, you're only going to fill it up until it starts to drip out of this hole. And once it's full, you put the drain plug back in and you're good to go. Alright guys, while everything's hanging loosely, this is the best time to go ahead and tighten up your H-pipe to your exhaust manifold flanges. And you're going to want to put some anti-seize on these. If you ever have to take them back off, you'll be glad you did. Now, using a combination between the engine hoist and a floor jack, I need to get this K-member up here where I can get a couple nuts and bolts in it, because the way that it's made, it's wanting to rock backwards, so it's not going to line up perfectly without scratching up the surface here. So what I want to do is try to get it up there as level as possible before I put a bolt in it, and then we can button it up. Alright, once you get some bolts in one side, don't tighten them all the way down, just kind of snug them up to hold everything up in place. And then come over on the other side and line everything up, get your bolts in, and then tighten everything down. Alright guys, the engine, transmission cross member, and the K member are fully bolted in the car. I've also got the H-pipe bolted in and mounted to the catback, so it's fully ran. Got the fuel system all buttoned up, and unfortunately I didn't get quite as far as I would have liked to have gotten today, but I decided I wanted to use a different set of spindles, and I need to clean those up and get them painted and whatnot. I also need a center style coil spring compressor, because the ones I have actually mount on the outside of the coil, and there's not quite enough room down there with the wide control arms that are on this car. So join me in the next video for that, guys. We'll get this thing down on its wheels and hopefully get it started up. I've got to finish installing my radiator and condenser and finish up the wiring on the interior, get the steering column in it, and also finish up the relocation of my battery. And this thing should be ready to roll around the yard at least, and I won't have to push it anymore. Like, share, subscribe, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.